I love my old 8-bit computers, but there are a few frustrations, including a lack of internal storage for all my lovely programs.
A new series now that explores the world of information science.
Maybe I can use modern electronic magic to give me what I want. Way back in 1980, home computers didn't have internal hard drives. A computer would have a CPU that did all the work and a maximum of 64K of memory that it could access at any one time. Generally, that 64K would be split between writable RAM, where a single user program and data could be stored, and a read-only ROM storing a rudimental operating system and a basic programming language interpreter. If you wanted to run a program, you had to either type it in or load it into RAM from cassette, or if you were posh, floppy disk. Cassettes were slow, and you had to know where on the tape the program file was. Discs were faster and had an index so you could always find the file you wanted. But there was no real internal storage for a library of programs or data files. Some computers like the BBC Micro allowed you to swap in ROMs that would enable multiple different languages, file systems, or even applications such as word processing, but you had to physically install the ROMs before you could use them. Many computers also had cartridge ports for a similar but easily replaceable alternative. The BBC Master had both. But ideally you'd have a single high capacity disk so you could store lots of programs and data files. Then you'd always have access to them without messing around with tapes, floppy disks, cartridges or ROMs. Such devices did become available to home users, but they were expensive and only had a capacity of about 10 megabytes. They also sat outside your computer and were about the size of a shoebox. In the mid to late 1980s, hard drives were small enough to fit inside something like an early PC or one of the larger 16 or 32-bit home computers. Now we take internal hard drives for granted in PCs and even in your phone. Rather than using magnetic disks and moving parts, they use solid-state memory. This allows you to store all the programs, music, video, data you'll need and get very rapid access with low power consumption. But what about my old 8-bit computer? Now I do already have an SD card reader, and it's very good, but it has its limitations. It's not recommended to use high capacity, high speed SD cards, and you get multiple individual disk images, so it's more like a jukebox where you select the disc to use. What I really want is a single high capacity disk that I can add a hierarchy of directories to store files in a structure that suits me. Now just maybe I found the solution. An IDE based internal compact flash drive that uses the ADFS filing system. Now IDE isn't used anymore for PCs, but because it's parallel rather than the more modern serial ATA, it can interface to the BBC's 1 MHz bus. Here's the kit unboxed and ready to be installed. I've already fitted a coprocessor from the same company, and I'll put a link to that video at the top of the screen. The first thing I need to do is install a new ADFS ROM. The standard BBC Master already comes with ADFS installed, but we need a different version. The instructions recommend installing it in slots 4 and 5. It takes up 2 slots because it's a 32K ROM, so that's 2 16K slots. That's 2 virtual slots, but only 1 physical ROM socket. I need to adjust the link to confirm I'm happy to sacrifice 32K of sideways RAM in exchange for the ROM installation. I'll keep my SD card filing system ROM in place for now in the hope that it'll all play nicely together. Now we can see slots 4 and 5 have versions of ADFS installed. One is version 1.53 for the master, the other is version 1.33 for a BBC-B, although both seem to have the same label in my ROM list. The next step is a bit more painful and permanent. I need to provide access from inside the case to the underside where the 1 MHz bus connector lives. That means I need to cut a hole big enough for this cable. And after some fiddling and a bit of cussing, I connect the cable into the 1 MHz bus on the underside of the computer. Now I have to route the cable under the keyboard, but over the circuit board and around the cartridge assembly. My first attempt doesn't work too well, so I have another go routing the cable under the speaker and between my coprocessor board and the cartridge ports. That's much better. Now I need to connect the power cables which piggyback existing spade connectors. This is the actual IDE interface and memory card which I'm going to mount on the underside of the top of the case using supplied self-adhesive pegs. Then I just connect the data cable and the power cable. When I power on the computer, I see the green detect and red power LEDs light. That's a good sign. It's time to configure my system. You can see I've temporarily disconnected my old external SD card reader, hence the card message. On the right is the ROM setup we now have. First thing to do is disable the version of ADFS that came with the original computer. We then configure the default file system to use ROM 4, which is ADFS version 1.53, and tell the system it's starting using a hard drive. Now I disable the other version of ADFS in slot 5. So we just have the active ADFS ROM, the one we're using as our default filing system. But I still keep the standard floppy disk and external SD card interface ROMs available. When I reboot, we are using ADFS as expected. So we should be able to see the content of our new hard drive. When I look at the connection to the 1 MHz bus port, it turns out it's not quite seated correctly, so I quickly fix that. Now I can see the content of my new hard disk. It comes preloaded with some goodies, so let's go exploring into some of those directories. I notice there's a boot file, so I try shift break to see what happens. What happens is a menu with some fun stuff to explore, including some old Acornsoft games. We also get the welcome disk as supplied with the original master computer. This includes the ADFS tutor. You might recognise the screen from earlier in this video. I noticed a music directory, so let's have a look in there. There's a file I recognise from back in the day, so let's try it. Back to the disk itself, we can see how much free space is on the disk, about half a gig, which is the most ADFS can handle and should be plenty for me. You can see I've already created a My Projects directory, but to demonstrate, I'll also create a My Test dir. There it is. Splendid. But can I switch back to use my external SD card? Yes, I can. That's some random stuff on that card, and I can load and run a program from it. Now, if I switch back to ADFS to use the internal drive again, I can navigate to the My Test directory I created a minute ago, which is currently empty, and save the program in there. Lovely stuff. Some of you may have noticed that the compact flash card is 2 GB, but I've only got half a gigabyte of disk space. That's partly due to the electronics. The flash card and IDE interface have a 16-bit data bus, but the old BBC Micro is 8-bit, so we can only access 8 out of the 16 bits, so we lose half the storage there. But we should still get 1 GB, right? Well, it turns out that there's a second drive available for you to mount. Drive 0 is the default, but drive 1 is empty and unnamed and gives us nearly another half gigabyte. You may have noticed a CD-ROM was included, labelled CFUtils. It turns out that this is a bit of a treasure trove, containing all sorts of old disc images, magazine cover discs, utility programs, ROM images, manuals, and some videos. So now my BBC Master is fully tricked out. I say. I've got a Raspberry Pi coprocessor, an internal hard drive, and I can still use my external SD card reader. It shows amazing foresight from the Acorn designers that the expansion capabilities, the user port, 1 MHz bus and tube, enable a 40-year-old computer to connect with relatively modern technology. Now I can run programs at decent speed and store significant amounts of data in a structured way. Could this old computer with these mods actually be useful today? I'll leave that thought with you, for now. I hope you liked this video. Yeah. If you did, then please like and subscribe.